Chapter 11:19, Tacit Cooperation. Upon hearing the chief's words, Shepherd Lovia immediately raised her question. Just like the two silver knights at the front gate of the king's court, it won't take the initiative to attack targets outside a certain range. Colin Iliad nodded slightly and said, "At least that's how it seems to be at the moment." They were already near the exit, but the guard outside had no reaction. This meant that the other party didn't possess real intelligence or spirituality. It was very likely that they were objects that came to life. Without waiting for the other members to speak, Demon Hunter Colin continued, "Huge, heavy." After obtaining the corresponding information, the City of Silver's group formed a tacit understanding. A team opened up a distance from the exit, but they faced towards the door. It was protected by Shepherd Elder Lovia. As the bait to attract the guards, a team took the corresponding holy oil from the chief and smeared it across the ground at the exit. Haim, who held the unshadowed crucifix, and Demon Hunter Colin stood by the side of the door and used the stone columns to hide. Then, Colin Iliad sheathed one of his swords onto his back and took out a small metal bottle, gulping down the liquid inside. His aura rapidly faded away and wasn't obvious anymore. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to discover his existence. This was another setup. Haim was in the open, while the demon hunter was hidden. After another 10 seconds, Shepherd Lovia stretched out her right hand and grabbed at thin air. Her silver-gray hair was dyed a deep blue color. The wind howled as the grayish-blue door opened. Right on the heels of that, heavy footsteps could be heard, causing the entire hall to shake. A giant, covered in iron-colored armor, rushed into the hall with a halberd in hand. Its exposed parts didn't show any flesh or blood, as though they were made of metal. Behind the black mask was a dark red glow. If it didn't move and stood there, it wouldn't be any different from a statue. Tab, tab, tab. The shaking in the hall became more and more obvious. The giant statue suddenly threw out the halberd in its hand, stirring up a hurricane that tore towards Derek and company at the door. Boom! The halberd struck an invisible barrier as the illusory ripples rapidly spread out. In front of Shepherd Lovia, an illusory figure that wore silver armor had appeared at some point in time. It stabbed its greatsword into the crack on the floor. Tab, tab, tab. The giant statue didn't stop as it ran into the hall. At that moment, a whistling sound was heard under its feet as its massive body jerked backward. It had stepped on the spot that was smeared with holy oil. As the giant statue fell, the crimson light in its eye suddenly bloomed as an invisible force appeared and held it up. Suddenly, a blinding white light shot out from the unshadowed crucifix, accurately hitting the giant statue's only eye. The dark red color dimmed. Demon Hunter Colin leaped up and held the same sword with both hands, plunging it down like an eagle swooping down at its prey. Dawn appeared as they converged on the straight sword, making it exceptionally huge. It even exceeded Colin Iliad's height. With a poof, the bright sword pierced through the gap in the giant statue's armor, stabbing into its eye. A flood of light from the dawn rushed in. With his hands still gripping the hilt of his sword, Colin Iliad exerted more force. As the giant statue fell to the ground, he pulled out his sword and leaped to the side. The giant statue lay at the door as its body emitted cracking sounds, until it finally all movement. Without looking at it again, Colin turned to look outside the door. After a few seconds, he said, "There are no other guards for now. We can handle this statue." Derek and company quickly surrounded the giant statue and skillfully searched for materials. Above the gray fog, Klein watched the entire battle from the sidelines and was deeply impressed by the City of Silver's teamwork. According to his observation, it was unknown what metal the giant statue was made of. Its surface was covered with armor that had shocking defensive strength. It could completely ignore most attacks in battle, and it was very difficult to deal with. Furthermore, this giant statue didn't have any spirit. In other words, it was immune to the beyonder powers of the corresponding domain, such as spirit body threads control, hypnotism, frenzy, and nightmare. It was like a walking fortress that made one suspect that it was the work of the goddess of harvest. Klein believed that, if he were in their shoes, with the core powers of a bizarro sorcerer being useless, he could only rely on his two marionettes' powers to deal with the giant statue. He had no idea how the battle would develop. The distortion and disorder powers of an Earl of the Fallen might be effective, but I might not be able to finish it as fast as the City of Silver's expedition team. A team of Beyonders with a tacit understanding would be able to produce the effect of 1 + 1 2. Yes, that chief's confidence in timing, as well as his decisiveness in his attack, was also key. Klein nodded slightly, feeling a sense of admiration. If this were really a live stream, then he might not be able to help but send a gift as a tip. Of course, there was a high chance that it was just a thought. After taking away the most valuable item on the giant statue, the City of Silver's expedition team proceeded forward. They followed the corridor outside and entered another hall. Just like that, they weaved through the layers of palaces, towers, and different corridors in an attempt to find more clues, as well as the entrance to the sea as described by the outsider, Jack. Regardless of whether they believed the boy's words, they couldn't help but look forward to the dark blue sea behind the giant king's court. On the other side of the sea, there were kingdoms where humans flourished. There were no monsters hidden in the darkness. The sun rose and set, and lightning only appeared when it rained. People had all sorts of food there. During this process, the City of Silver's expedition team didn't encounter many enemies. Most of them were statues that had come to life. A small number of them were evil spirits formed by the combination of remnant emotions and the power of dusk. The latter was unable to put up any resistance against the unshadowed crucifix. That's normal. The fool Klein above the gray fog nodded slightly, expressing his acceptance of the current situation. After the giant king perished, this place already belonged to the ancient sun god. It's unlikely that there will be a large number of giant powerhouses and mystical items left behind. When the kings of angels were conspiring, they definitely eliminated any unnecessary troubles ahead of time. Once the ancient sun god was eaten up, the ownership of this place was a mystery. Perhaps it was abandoned. In short, there aren't many foreseeable demigods or items. Well, without the unshadowed crucifix, those evil spirits will be very troublesome. The City of Silver's expedition team might not be able to advance so smoothly, making it impossible for them to advance so far unless an angel leads a team or activates a Grade 0 sealed artifact. When the unshadowed crucifix returned to Derek, the City of Silver's expedition team was already very close to the tallest building in the giant king's court. The dusk here was extremely dense, as though it came from that palace. Once we leave this hall, we should come to the wing of the giant king's residence. Demon Hunter Colin got his bearings and direction before pointing ahead. Shepherd Elder Lovia nodded. Finally, there was some irresistible hope in her expression. Derek's heart beat faster, and he could no longer control his excitement. Then, he was placated by Antiona. After composing themselves, the people from the City of Silver entered the hall in front of them and saw that there were oil paintings hanging on both sides. These oil paintings depicted different giants. Some held bone flutes, some carried wind chimes, while others carried a 7-stringed guitar that matched their height. As the City of Silver's expedition team arrived, the giants in the oil painting suddenly came to life. They began playing their instruments, producing a beautiful tune. The light of dusk in the hall lit up a little. More and more food appeared on the long tables around them as they glowed with a tempting glisten, effusing a very tempting fragrance. Roasted chicken, roasted goose, fish with honey baste. Is this a dinner banquet for the giant king's court? But aren't the sizes of those chickens, geese, goats, and fish too large, the work of the goddess of harvest? With a glance, Klein confirmed that the food that appeared was an illusion. After all, the giant king's court no longer had any ingredients, nor did it possess anyone who could envision or create them. This is normal food. Haim, who was holding Thunder God's roar, stared straight at one of the long tables. His Adam's apple bobbed. Maybe, Derek sniffed and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Apart from the black-faced grass, they had never seen normal food. The meat that the monsters roasted was of different colors, but they also tasted equally as bad. It could even poison them. Demon Hunter Colin stared for a few seconds before sighing. They're all fake. Don't come into contact with them, or there might be unnecessary accidents. Other than Lovia, the team from the City of Silver retracted their gaze with great difficulty. They followed the chief all the way to the exit of the hall. After a series of inspections, Colin Iliad inserted his swords into the ground and pushed open the heavy door. A crack appeared as rich orange light shone inside. As the gap grew bigger, the towering palace gradually became clear. Then, the people from the City of Silver heard a crashing sound. At this moment, Colin drew out a sword and suppressed the restlessness in his team members' hearts. He then drew out his other sword and slowly walked out of the hall. Derek and the others followed cautiously. After completely bathing in the light of dusk, they looked to the left at the same time. There were railings formed from stone pillars. Beyond the railings, there was an orange-red cloud that was gently ebbing at the distance. On the endless swath of dark blue, they emitted crashing sounds. There was no need for anyone to explain. At the same time, the members of the City of Silver's exploration team recalled the records in the book and Jack's description. A term flashed in their minds. The sea.